All right, I think we are live, Jitendra.
Yes,
Okay, all right. So starting off with the session, first of all, I would want to thank you, Jitendra, for taking your time out on a Sunday evening from your busy
thank
schedule.
you.
Yeah, and honoring us to participate in this talk show of Let's Talk. Just to give our viewers a brief about our organization and what we do. Our organization is called as Awam, and primarily we are a parent empowering organization working for the benefit of parents whose kids are under the spectrum. We are based out of Hyderabad, and it's been pretty,
Mhm.
we are still in a very nascent stage. And we look forward for years to come by and then, provide our services throughout. That's pretty much about myself. So let's start the session with you, Jitender. Tell us
Yes.
something about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Jitendra Solanki, and I am a practicing financial planner by profession and also an estate planner. So I'm based out of Ghaziabad, and currently I run my own practice as a freelancer, as a consultant, working on financial planning for families.
Mhm.
And assisting families with special need children is one of my expertise and one of my areas where I work upon. So as I said, I am an expert, so I work on financial planning. Plus I also run an estate planning firm called Special Need Estate Planners Private Limited,
Wonderful.
where we provide services related to legal aspects for the families, especially will, trust, and professional trusteeship services. So that's the area of expertise I hold, and it's being 15 years into this industry, plus 7 years I've been running my own practice. And with special children families, yes, we have been working for last 7 years, helping them on financial planning, legal planning, and many other aspects.
Oh, wow, that's a very rich experience that you hold, definitely. Uh, all right, like I said, welcome to the show. Just wanted to understand, more about financial planning because I had lots of, friends and colleagues, also parents, asking about, they're always worried about the future of the kids, especially if the kids are under the spectrum. In order to proceed further, I would want to, segregate this conversation into three parts. Okay, the
Yeah,
existing, the
yeah.
present, and then we talk about the future. Existing in the sense, what I want to find out, or what many viewers also want to find out, is, like we say, every penny saved is every penny earned. Similarly, if you could elaborate more on what are the current benefits provided by the government for kids and for parents whose kids are on the spectrum, or if they are disabled, or if there are any special needs parents, and any tax exemptions that can be
Okay.
availed. Okay, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So, looking at the government benefits, I would say there are not many monetary benefits directly to the families. Right. So
Okay.
there are two aspects. One is non-monetary benefits, and other one is the monetary benefits.
Mhm.
Right. Now, if you look at the non-monetary benefits provided by the government, then there are travel concessions. There are concessional loans given to the families who want to start a business. States run disability pensions for with certain terms and conditions for families who are primarily into low income group. Then there are reservation in government properties. There are reservation in government jobs. So likewise, these are non-monetary benefits which are provided to the families, right? The monetary benefits are quite low, provided by the government, and they are primarily focused on the low income group, right? So like a disability pension, so with a certain condition on that, this is a maximum annual income of a family. Every state provides a pension to the disabled, person with disabled. Like in Delhi, you have 2000 monthly pension provided to a person with disabilities.
Okay.
Similarly, UP, other states will have a monthly pension. Some states would have lower, some state might be higher. So it's a state subject, so state
Okay.
decide how much pension needs to be given. Now
Mhm.
that's the monetary benefit provided directly to the person with disabilities, but to a certain section of people,
Okay,
of
that's only for
families.
the lower income group of people.
Yes, largely to the lower income group. And we also understand that most of the government aided options which are available, they will primarily focus on lower income groups.
Mhm.
right? So these are the,
Sorry to cut you.
yeah, yeah.
Any specific bracket, any annual income bracket or anything like that when you call about lower income group?
I think if I am not wrong, it is roughly around maybe 70,000 annual income, or primarily lower than that.
Oh, so we're
Okay.
talking about below poverty line then.
Yes, largely, towards that.
Mhm.
That is, no, that is the only monetary benefit directly you can get. But as a family, if you have a special need child in your family, then as I said, there are a lot many non-monetary benefits which are available.
Mhm.
When you are traveling, there are concessional travels available. If you want to start a business with your child name, then you can get a loans on concessional rates. There are reservation in properties if you want to buy,
Mhm.
right, in the name of your child. So you get a concession on that. There are reservation also on that, that certain percentage are allotted to person with disabilities. So
Mhm.
that way non-monetary benefits are available which a family can avail. And
Available.
this is for all the families, not specific condition to low income group,
Mhm. Uh,
right?
yeah, yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So this was the government benefit. Now the
Mhm.
second question you asked on the tax exemption which is
Uh-huh.
available, right? So there are two kind of tax exemption which is available. The first of all is a direct income deduction which you get, and
Mhm.
that is for all the families. So there are two, section 80U and section 80
Mhm.
right? Now 80U is a person, for the person with disabilities,
Mhm.
right, directly. So if your child is an adult and if you're filing an income tax return for him, okay, showing his income, then you can claim a benefit under 80U. So you
Okay.
get a certain so you can get an deduction from your income. And there are two levels. One is the severe disability, that is more than 80% disability,
Mhm.
so you get exemption up to 1.5 lakh,
Mhm.
right? If it's lower than 80%, then it's up to 1 lakh, right? So
Mhm.
that is under 80U. So 80U will be directly for the person with disabilities. But for a family, you have got a special need child and you are making expenditure for his treatment, then you can get under 80DD, you can get an income tax deduction
Mhm.
up to the same limit. So for severe disability and for less than 80% disabilities, so you get 1.25 lakh and 1 lakh exemption. So this is an income tax exemption directly available which every family can claim who have got a special need child.
Yeah,
Now
provided you have the bills for therapies and everything, is that included?
yes, no, this is a directly an income tax deduction. This is not with irrespective of the expenditure you have made.
Okay.
Okay, so you get a directly deduction from your income.
So what do we have to show to get this deduction?
There is a medical certificate which is required in a specific format. That medical certificate you have to show. But otherwise, because all of these income tax return today is now online,
Uh-huh.
so even otherwise also there are no bills to be uploaded online.
Okay.
But yes, that medical certificate is going to be required, which family has to ensure that medical certificate is there.
Okay. So that medical certificate has a I mean, particular format in which.
Yes, it's a particular format. It's available on the income tax website, and that on that specific format you can get the medical certificate, right? And then you can get an income tax deduction.
Wonderful. This
Right.
was one of the
So
things which I
this
was
is
looking
one.
for.
Now
Yeah.
there is one more income tax exemption, or an income tax benefit which is available, which largely is not known to many of the families, and this is where I want to focus on.
Mhm.
Right. Now, if your child is minor, in general, if your child is minor and if there is any income on his name,
Mhm.
then that income gets clubbed with the parent and taxed as the parent's income, right?
Okay.
But if you have got a special need child and child is minor, and if he any income is generated on his name, then it does not get clubbed with the parent income. You can create a separate tax file for the child. Now
Okay.
where does it benefit? The benefit, you look at, if I am a parent, I am in the highest tax slab,
Okay.
on 30% tax slab. Now if I shift some of my investments like fixed deposit to my child name,
Mhm.
then I can create a separate tax file on his name, and his income is going to start as my income starts, right from the basic exemption up to 10%, 20%. So I shift an high income generating asset, right? As I lower down the taxability on that when I shift that to my special child name, especially during the minority. So
So
that
this
is
also
one.
changes when the child becomes a major. Well, I mean, adult. What happens when he
So
becomes an adult?
as an adult, the tax file is already created. So though the
Doesn't
the
fall in.
income keeps on earning and he keeps on paying the taxability.
Okay.
But especially during the minority, this one exemption is available, or one benefit is available, which is not utilized by many parents, especially those in the higher tax slab.
Mhm.
And this is where I think one of the income tax benefit which families can avail, especially as I said, 30%, 20% tax bracket. If I shift my some of the income generating asset to my child name, especially the movable asset, fixed deposits, or any other asset where interest is generated, I can just lower down the tax liability straight away.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Any other benefits that you're aware of which parents should be knowing? Like this was an eye opener. I did not know about this actually.
No, I don't see any other income tax benefit or any other monetary benefit which is available to the special children families. There is no specific benefit available, a specific yeah, either in income tax or from the government side. Unfortunately, there are no specialized products or specialized investment vehicle or specialized tax saving which is available for special childrens.
Okay. All right. Jitendra, moving on, just wanted to find out, what are the specific certificates, documents, or IDs that are required for special kids, which parents need, because it takes time. These are,
Yes.
nationalized identities and certificates, so it takes time. So in order to get that, and, for financial planning also, at certain point, we definitely do need some of these. So what are these documents or certificates that
Okay.
you think which is required actually?
Yes. So the first and foremost, which is the primary important, and that is a disability certificate,
Okay.
right? If your child has a disability, any autism or cerebral palsy, and that after assessment it counts as more than 40%,
Hmm.
then he is treated as disabled under the government provisions. Okay,
Hmm.
and then you need a disability certificate to prove that he is actually has a disability beyond 40%. Now
Hmm.
40% is the benchmark disability in India.
Hmm.
Any disability which is below 40% on assessment is not considered as disabled, so you
Hmm.
won't be able to take any benefit, because no disability certificate will be issued if it's less than 40%. But if
Hmm.
it's more than 40%, then disability certificate is issued, and that is the basis of all the benefits you are going to avail in the future. So you require the disability certificate to prove. So that
Okay.
is the first document which every family should avail,
Hmm.
right? And
And that
disability.
that's available from the government medical.
Yes, yes, disability certificate are issued by the government hospitals,
Okay.
right? And every state, so you have to find out which is a government hospital. Now the processes has changed a bit. How it has changed? So I'll talk on the second document first. The second document is the UDID card, unique disability ID card. Now
Okay.
it's basically what government is doing. So government is creating much like an Aadhaar for every individual. So only for disabled it has created UDID card. So
Hmm.
I would say it's a it's an Aadhaar for disabled.
Hmm.
So that UDID card gives a unique number to your special child
Okay.
identity,
Hmm.
and it carries all the important information, the type of disability, the percentage of disability, and a unique number.
Hmm.
Now, what is the benefit of UDID card? First of all, in the future, everything is going to get linked to UDID card, whether it's a child bank account, whether under income tax, or where or any other information.
Hmm.
Second, in the future, you have an UDID card, you do not need to carry another document,
Okay.
whether traveling in India or abroad, with
Hmm.
that unique number, because
Hmm.
it pertains only to your child. With that unique number, the information can be accessed.
Okay.
Okay, so that UDID card every family should avail for their child. And the process is simple. The process is there is a website called swavlambancard.gov.in.
Hmm.
Now you can apply for this card online. You have to upload the disability certificate, provide the information, and you get UDID card through the means of post or courier.
Okay.
So that is there. Now there is one more benefit which is available on this website, is that in some states and some district, even the disability certificate can also be applied online through this.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so you can apply online. You can get a specific date where you have to carry you have to go along with your child for assessment, and after that the certificate is issued.
Okay.
So that is one more benefit, that if you haven't availed disability certificate, you can apply it online, provided your government the list of hospital in your city is listed on the website.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the two primary document. The third, which is the most important document which family would face, is once the child turns 18 years of age.
Mhm.
Now, by law, till the child is 18 or till the child is minor, the parents are considered to be the natural guardian.
Correct.
Now, once the child is an adult, then there is no requirement of guardianship under law,
Mhm.
because if you are an adult, you can take decisions for yourself,
Correct.
right? But because special children required a support for the lifelong, so
Mhm.
you need somebody to take decision on their behalf, and to do that, you have to seek a legal guardianship certificate from the court.
Mhm.
Now, the government has simplified the process of legal guardianship, because going to court, seeking a certificate, it takes a time and cost. To
Mhm.
simplify that, the government created the National Trust Act, where the National Trust Organization is created. Now,
Mhm.
you can apply for this legal guardianship certificate online through National Trust website. Once you apply the certificate, you get a reference number. You are called for an assessment on a particular date. After that assessment, the legal guardianship certificate is issued to the parents, right?
Okay.
So first is the parents. If parents are not available, then whoever is the nearest blood relative, the
Mhm.
legal guardianship certificate is issued to them. These are the three most primary document which is required by all the families.
So disability certificate, and then you're talking about a UDID card, and then the third thing that you're talking about is the legal guardianship. For
Yes.
these are the three things which are utmost important for any special kid or any parent to have these documents ready with them.
Yes, all these three documents would be required to continue planning for your child. Legal guardianship would be required after 18. If you want to open a bank account without legal guardianship certificate, you cannot open a bank account. Similarly, if you do not have a disability certificate, you cannot get any of the benefits available. And UDID card, I would say the government has started it. The UDID card is being issued, and going future, everything is going to get linked to the UDID card.
So, perfect. So, okay, moving on to the financial planning part, Jitendra, just wanted to find out, so just like what you just gave us, three or four important documents which parents require. Similarly, can you just, let uh, all the parents know what are the three, four basic things that they need to keep in mind while they are doing a financial planning for their kids?
Right. So, financial planning for the kid, or I would say for the family. So, there are three or four basic points I would discuss.
Okay.
First of all, uh, the basics of any financial planning is knowing about your cash flows, right? How
Mhm.
good or bad you are,
Mhm.
right? What is going in, what is going out.
Mhm.
With a special need child, you should always have a separate budget created for the child, right?
Mhm.
The way you create your household expenses, the way you monitor your household expenses, the same way you should monitor your special child expenses,
Mhm.
right? Now, what is the what is the benefit of that? Because at any point of time when you are planning for your child, you should know how much money you require for his lifelong care, and that you can identify only when you know that what amount of money is being spent on his expenses now, tomorrow, and in the future. Then only you can calculate this. So that is the starting basis point. The
Mhm.
second is that creating an emergency fund. Always create an emergency fund. The needs are higher. So
Mhm.
in a general case, it's a 4 to 6 months emergency fund you maintain. But when you have a special need child, you might have to maintain a basically 1 year or 1.5 year emergency fund.
Mhm.
This. Now the third is having an adequate insurance with you.
Mhm.
Adequate health insurance, adequate life insurance, adequate disability insurance.
Mhm.
Health, life, and disability are the three most primary important insurance you should plan. Now,
Mhm.
health insurance, I do agree for special need children's,
There will be
there is a
certain things.
limitation,
Yes.
but that is opening up. Now, how it is opening up, that for autism, Star Health, Religare Health, they started, covering policies. Now, there was a recent ruling by IRDA where from 1st October 2020, all insurance companies have to cover all kind of disabilities. So very soon you will see all the companies start, giving insurance coverage to special needs children. So that thing is opening up. So adequate insurance not only on the child, on yourself also. Anything which is related to financial implication, you should cover it adequately. So health, life, and disability. So these things you should have an adequate coverage. Now, the fourth point is that creating a provision for your child future, knowing who is going to be the legal guardian after you, where he is going to live, right, and what is the legal framework you should build, right. So that you should decide today, because creating any provision or any for the future is a time taking process. There is a cost also on it, so you need to work upon it. And the last is the retirement planning. You should plan your retirement much early in life, much like any other family. Your needs are higher, and when you are doing a retirement planning, there are a lot of consideration you have to take. So who's going to be how the expenses will be met. You have to plan for two purposes. What if you are you going to live in the same city? Are you going to relocate? Where is the child going to live elsewhere? So all these questions have to be answered. So retirement planning has to be done proper. Now the last is, and this is where the first if your family asks me what is the first document I should create for my child future, and I always tell them create a letter of intent or a letter of wishes. Just to give you what is a letter of intent. Now if I have to ask you a question, just suppose you are leaving your child for 4 hours to your neighbor, what is the instruction you will give it to them? Extend this. If you are leaving your child, say maybe for 4 days to a neighbor, what instruction will you give it to them? And if you have to decide for someone for the lifelong, how you going to give them instruction? Because as a parent, you know much about them, they won't be knowing as much as you know. So what is the document you can create which can become a reference guide for them? And letter of intent is that single document which can resolve many of the issues, especially who's going to take care of my child after me.
Correct. So the letter of intent actually hints to more towards, we are moving our discussion more towards creating a letter of intent, and then going towards the trust side of it. Prior to that, I just want to ask, often I have heard, people talking about support system, and, going ahead and telling that, we should have adequate support system within us and within our families to take care of our children. So in today's world where everyone is going nuclear, okay, how exactly do you feel, or what, according to you, would you advise, to check what are the criterias for a support system? How we create a support system? How do we trust someone whom we include in our support system?
Okay. Yeah, that's an important question, and it's very difficult to answer, because in all your support system, something can work without legal provision, but there are certain consideration, or there are certain situations where the legal aspects comes in between, right? See, a support system require a support system on 3 or 4 different front.
Hmm.
Hello,
Yeah, I can hear
you can
you.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So support system, or I would say, who are the stakeholders who can manage the special child affairs? Now, first of all, you require a legal guardian who continue to manage the personal affairs. Is he comfortable with the child? How much does he know about the special needs child affairs?
Hmm.
Right? Is he in the same city or a different city?
Hmm.
So these kind of question you need to ask yourself when you are appointing an individual to take care of the child after your lifetime, right? And he or she should be ready to make adjustment in his life, and to know that he know about your child requirement. He should be aware about your child requirement, then only he can take decision on your behalf. Now that is the one aspect of that. The second is where the child going to live. Is a child lives with the parent, but after the parent, where the child live. If you are looking at a residential care home, care center, right? You need to create a checklist of a residential care. What kind of services they provide, what kind of trained staff they have, how much experience they have, and what is the structure they have created, how they are going to provide for the lifelong security of your child, how is the finances going to move to that residential care. So you need to create that checklist even for the residential care which you have identified now. And once you have identified a residential care, you have appointed somebody, a legal guardian, and probably you might be forming a trust to manage the financial affair, or the legal guardian would. You need to look at that, how they are going to work together, how the residential care is going to work with the legal guardian, or is there a community of family who is going to be there every time your child needs some kind of support along with all these stakeholders. So what happens when we are working with our organization, so we always say that though you identified everything differently, somebody has a legal guardian role can play, some a residential care is there, unless and until they come under one roof and come under an ecosystem, it's very difficult to provide that system of security for your child. So to provide a support system, first of all, identify all the people, asking yourself the right kind of question, how it is going to happen, and then look at a system, create a system where all these can work together.
Correct. So moving on, Jitendra, one question that comes to my mind, typically is that when you look at people of our age, okay, they generally start saving, or they start talking about savings typically by the age of 40 and then onwards. I would hardly, find anyone doing a proper financial planning at the age of 35 or 30s because they're young, okay, and they don't want to get into that financial planning part that early.
Yeah.
So if I were to think,
Yes.
that, 40 being the age, and you have a very limited duration specifically for people who are working, and you have a limited period of time. How do you think, should we go ahead and invest, probably mutual funds, SIPs, fixed deposits? Which is your best take on this? And how do you think it can, benefit parents the most? Because of late, the rate of interest is also fluctuating due to the pandemic. So,
Yeah.
how do we come to it?
Okay, so coming to on investment, first of all, I would say the way we had interaction with the families. So first thing we have find out is that one thing which is there, that you can't be too conservative in your investment,
Mhm.
because you need good returns, and your needs are much higher. Your retirement corpus is much higher, so you need good returns, good accumulation of money with the limited resources you have. And to optimize your resources, you need asset classes which can generate an inflation beating returns. So
Correct.
being too conservative, I would say, will hamper your goals of meeting your lifetime requirement.
Mhm.
So when you are making an investment, and even if you're starting at at the age of 40, yes, the requirement is probably a bit higher if you have started at 30 years of age. But even if you're starting at 40, you need to have a proper asset allocation approach. Second, you
Mhm.
can't miss out on asset classes which generate higher returns like your equities. Yes,
Okay.
maybe for one parent it might be 30% equity, for another parent it might be 50% equity, depends on your risk tolerance, right?
Mhm.
But you need to start investing into equities if you haven't invested in, uh, and taking a higher risk for the families, though most of the families avoid it. But I would say once you have invested for your goals, right, and when you have invested for your goals through different modes, then you can go for a higher risk investment. And when I say higher risk, it means highly volatile investment.
Mhm.
But largely you should follow an asset allocation approach, where if you look at in even the past, all the asset classes should be there in your basket.
Mhm.
You can't be too conservative investing into just fixed income asset, or you can't be highly aggressive investing everything into real estate. So the
Mhm.
choice of asset classes, the choice of asset allocation has to be there for the family. And uh, even if you're starting at the age of 40, as you said, though, with asset allocation approach, I think the basic goal of investing is that, first of all, you need to work on how much long term you're going to invest that money, and what is the money for short term. And largely, I have been advising families to take a bucket strategy approach. So the best approach is that you identify your goals and create buckets separately. So one bucket goes for emergency fund, one bucket goes for the goal which is next 5 years down the line, one bucket goes for goal which is 10 years down the line, and one bucket goes for retirement corpus.
Okay.
So that way, if you can create this bucket, it becomes easier for you to identify the investment asset class for that. So if there is an emergency fund, I know I will invest only in liquid asset class. So I put into debt mutual fund or a fixed deposit, or let the money in saving account. I know my retirement is 20 years ahead. I need good accumulation of money. So I'm going to invest into equities, debt, gold, and other asset classes as per my risk tolerance. So you need to decide, you need to look at this bucket strategy approach. I have found that is the best approach you can look for investing your money. Now, the only one consideration which comes in that other goals are fine. How do you decide on a special child goal? Because his requirement is lifelong.
Correct.
So in that way, for the special child also, what you can do is, for the next 3 year expenses, keep it in short term. 3 to 7 years expenses, make it mid-term. Any expense which is going to come after 7 or 10 years, keep it in the long-term investment category. And any other goal which you have, suppose you may have to make an adjustment in the house. Your child is 5, 18 years, you have to make an adjustment in the house. It becomes a long-term goal. So add on any of these goals. When you divide your special child goal into this way, you are able to align the investment asset classes in the right bucket, right? And that's the basic approach, or that's the approach you should take when you are investing your money.
Correct. So also, Jitendra, you did mention that for low income group we have certain government aids and stuff like that. Uh, Coming back and touching base on that, I'm sure you would have also dealt with a lot of assisted living and people now, thinking about assisted living. So when we look at assisted living, I have seen that a couple of them are extremely expensive. When you look at it, probably they are almost adding up to 40,000, 50,000 per month, adding up to 6 lakhs almost per annum. Okay.
Yes.
Now, let's say a parent whose income is hardly 6 lakhs now, or maybe 5 lakhs or lesser. How do they think about assisted living, or what is it that you would advise for such parents?
Okay. Yes, largely, if I look at with that income group, but the choices are very limited, first of all, because government aided facilities, though have been there, some of them, but the quality of those has not been up to the mark. So you can't really rely on government aided, assisted living centers. And the private ones which are coming, yes, the expenses which you have mentioned are largely in that range. So so for a family who have got an income group, say maybe a low income of 5 lakh or a 6 lakh of income, the choice is really difficult, because if you do not have a right assisted living, where the child is going to live?
Correct.
Okay. I think there is no very straightforward answer as of today, because when you don't have an assisted living in those lower than those expenses, and especially the government aided ones are not up to the mark, and you cannot rely upon, it's very difficult to find an assisted living residential care. Largely, which the approach which I have been seeing which parents are taking, is that they are coming together and they are finding these resources. So I'll just give you an example how it is done. So the parents come together, they find they build up a residential society, right? They look at a residential society, and they have a service provider. So they contract a service provider who's going to provide the services to these families, to their children for lifelong. This is how the model is going to work now. And there are certain models which are implemented in different states, different ways. One is this model which I am seeing. The other model I am seeing is that the parents are working with specific builders who is building a complete society of inclusive living. So there's going to be special children's also staying there. There's going to be other families staying there, and there are going to be service providers who will provide all the services to them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So on the assisted living, I would say we are still lagging behind, unless and until government brings out some if unless and until government aided centers really reach higher in quality, it's going to be very difficult to find a assisted living center with a very low expenses running in, and all the private ones which are there, the expenses which you said are in the range.
Mhm.
So it's still a drawback, I would say, and I don't have in my mind any government aided assisted living where I can recommend that that this is the best one you can look at.
Perfect. Also, Jitendra, one question that comes to my mind out of the blue, generally we've heard people saying that, whatever might be your salary, let's say X is your salary, typically people end up spending 30% of their salary towards accommodation. So is there any ballpark figure for savings as well?
Savings in general, yes, there are certain thumb rules which have been developed. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
so the rule is like for your take home income, you would be saving at least 25 to 30% of your income. Then only you can reach your goal. The second is that 15 to 20%, not more than that, should go into long term investment, right?
Okay. So
So that
your
is
bucket actually, the
yes,
definition of your
yes.
bucket actually falls in here. All right.
Yes. So, with respect to savings, I think, the moment you see that my savings is reducing from 30 to 40%, especially when I am into towards the later stage of my working career, my income is at peak. And if at that stage, if my savings is lower than this, then that's a really very scary situation for you.
Mhm.
Okay. So, and the way, we have been advising families every time, keep your saving rate at least 25 to 30%,
Mhm.
shouldn't go less than that, because if you go less than that, then you are not saving enough money, and if you're not going to save enough money, how much you are going to accumulate? And you need to identify the reason why it is happening. Sometimes your debt might be higher, sometimes your expenses might be higher on just on special child, and we have experience with families where almost 70% of their budget is being spent on the special child,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
So I mean, for the savings, if you look at, I would say the ballpark figure is 30%, right? 30-40%, you need that much amount of saving to save for yourself also and for the special child also.
Perfect. Perfect. Uh, Also, how would you, I mean, you've been advising, parents and families and lots of other people also financially. So, have you seen any difference when you compare, parents or having only one kid vis-a-vis parents having two, three kids? How is their investment, is there any difference or is there anything that strikes out evidently which we need to pick up and learn or something like that?
So your question is, are both children on the spectrum, or like one child is on the spectrum and other child is not?
It
You're
can
talking
be
on basically on those families.
it can be anything. It can be either one
Okay.
kid on the spectrum, one kid not. It can be
Hmm.
typically only one kid, a parent having one kid, or
Hmm.
maybe parent having
Hmm.
one kid on the spectrum, or
Hmm.
and three or four normal neurotypical kids. So how is their
Yeah.
investment pattern different differing?
Okay. So yes, we have worked with all the three type of families. So we have single parents also who have got a, they are single parent. They have a one child as a special child. Plus we have families who have got two children, but both are on the spectrum. And
Mhm.
we've got families also where only one child is on the spectrum and second not. So the challenge, for the family with one child,
Mhm.
the challenge with them is, if there are single parent, the challenge with them, they have on the limited income and they have to plan for themselves, and their expenses are a bit higher. Why I'm
Mhm.
saying is higher, because they have to rely on professional services. They are
Correct.
the only one who's taking care, they are the only one who is earning. So
Mhm.
because of that, their saving rate is bit low,
Mhm.
right? And when their saving rate is low, so the challenge is always how to provide for the future, because for the later years they are the only one who have to plan for themselves. So their planning would take much higher cost than a family who have got a, two children where one child is on spectrum and other child is not. Now with the and they're in, so they are tend to be more conservative, on investing side, because they know that this is the only money left for me also, and for my child also.
Correct.
Now, and the families who have got two children where one is not on the spectrum, one is on the spectrum, we have seen largely that they are able to take a higher risk, on investing side. Why? Because they have got a slightly comfortability on that tomorrow, for the future, they have got, the other child who can take care of that,
Mhm.
right? So that when that comfortability comes in, the savings, the investment, specifically, they can they tend to have a higher risk appetite. Now, a
Mhm.
family who got both the child on the spectrum, I think, first of all, yes, they also tend to be highly conservative, right?
Mhm.
Because they have two children, and whatever money they are saving, so the risk appetite is low. But we
Mhm.
have families also who have, both child on the spectrum, but their investment we have seen, on the balance side. I mean, they're able to take, they are taking 50% equity, 50% other asset class, or they're taking a higher risk than the conservative families. But yes, there is a difference between the investment approach between the, these three
Correct.
families.
Correct. Correct. All right. So moving on, Jitendra, just we've all heard about going ahead and having a trust, and then going ahead. So my basic question is, how do we know what is the public trust and what is the private trust?
Okay, so public trust is generally a trust which is where the public is the beneficiary.
Mhm.
So a trust created for a temple, a charitable trust created, for, say, even for this charitable trust created for special children's, any trust which is created where no single individual derives any benefit. Now that
Mhm.
is termed as a public trust. A
Correct.
private family trust is where within the family, one family, any specific individual or individual derive all the benefit. So that is going to be a private family trust. Now the
Mhm.
major difference between these two is that the public trust have got a very standard terms and condition laid down by the Indian Trust Act and specific laws.
Mhm.
You can't really change it. In a
Mhm.
private family trust, beyond what is there under Indian Trust Act, you can create your terms and condition based on your family requirement, right?
Mhm.
So if you want certain trust to be, invest in something manner, in certain manner, you want benefit to go in a certain manner, you want to change, certain things tomorrow, you can create in a private family trust, because it is for your family, it is for individuals within your family.
Mhm.
And the public trust is largely for the public, so you can't create your, terms and conditions separately. So that's the major difference between the public and a private family trust. So when you are creating, looking at for the future of your special need child,
Mhm.
you are creating a private family trust.
Mhm. 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 Okay, understood. And whenever you're doing it for the public, it is a public trust or a
Yes,
non-profit organization. Okay. So,
yes. So all temples, charitable organization would come under the public trust.
perfect, perfect, perfect. Also, just wanted to find out, when we're talking about trusts and all, and opening up a trust, maybe a couple of special parents getting together, and then putting in an organization. Okay, how do they ensure that the trust actually functions adequately? Okay, and are there any governing bodies who are looking after these trusts?
So, when a family is creating a private family trust, first of all, there is no governing body who is monitoring a private trust.
Mhm.
So the authority higher than the private trust is the court. So all matters related to, trust, anything happens, or anything has to be settled, get into the court,
Uh-huh.
right? But when you are creating a private trust, now the
Uh-huh.
structure of a private trust itself creates a level of free responsibility, right?
Uh-huh.
So you have a settler, so you are the parents who are settling the trust.
Uh-huh.
After you settle the trust, your role may be limited, right? Then you have trustees who are, who's going to manage the trust. Now they are a representative, they do
Mhm.
not own any asset, They do not own any entity. They are representative of the beneficiary, and they are managing the trust. And trustee is a legal responsibility. When I say a legal responsibility, means they can be held legally liable by the courts if if they're if any wrongdoing is done. So the way private trust structure is created, so you can create a layer of security within the private trust. So you can involve family members, you can involve family members plus professionals also for managing the trust. You can involve families not directly as a trustee, but maybe as a role of a protector who can oversee the trust affairs. So that way you can create a layer of security, and that benefit comes in that a private trust does not have standard terms and condition. When you can create as per your requirement, so you can create that layer of security.
Mhm. Mhm. All right. Anything else that you would want to, advise our parents who are watching this show, to start acting upon, or maybe to work on, and then, be financially sound, and then plan for a better future?
Yeah. So my advice to the families is that, and this is my experience working with families. One is financial planning has to start early in life. Understanding that your needs are higher. What happens is that families, who get late on planning, suddenly when they see the huge amount of money they require for leaving behind for their child, right? So that create a worriness, for them, and then they leave the planning behind. So the financial planning has to start early in life. Plus you need to have a financial plan created. It's not just not in your mind, but you need to actually create a document and see how things to be done.
Mhm.
Third, have ready your letter of wishes, because
Mhm.
for any eventualities, what is your vision for the child, how you wanted your child to be treated, how the care should be taken, what is your guidance to the guardian, what is your guidance to other family members, all is written in the letter of wishes.
Mhm.
So that letter of intent, all families should write. I won't say because, and it's not a legal document, it's a simple document you have to complete and you have to write and be ready with it. That
Mhm.
is there. The fourth is create be ready with all the provision, have adequate life insurance, health insurance, and disability insurance. Cover yourself first, and then look at special need child, because you are the one who is handling. And the last one is that whatever provisions you have thought of, you
Mhm.
bring that provision into practice. Don't just delay it,
Mhm.
because the pressure is huge, right? Because there are a lot of things which needs to be done. Take step by step process, complete one by one, and seek professional help wherever you require.
Mhm.
Don't be shy, or don't restrict yourself in taking a professional help. I think that's the basic understanding of mine working with families. And I would say, if I have to say a single sentence, that financial planning has to start today. And if you
Mhm.
do not plan today, tomorrow you will find that your requirements are much higher. Then it's going to be very difficult to provide for.
Actually, you answered a very nice question. There was one of the questions from one of
Yeah.
the parents who was saying that, what qualities to see, in a guardian for proper financial care to be taken for their kids, okay?
Yeah.
Because we have cases of people, cheating
Mm,
and fraudulent cases.
mm.
So obviously, if you're saying they're legally abided, I mean, that would be one of the greatest things. I mean,
No, so legal, on the legal guardian also, when you are identifying a legal guardian, so we also created a checklist also, that what kind of question you should ask. First of all, how much comfortable your child is with the legal guardian. The second is the legal guardian ready to make adjustment in his life.
mhm,
The third is in which city he's going to live, and how he's going to, how much he knows about your child affairs. So and if he doesn't know about your child affairs, how you can basically make him aware.
mhm,
And that's where the letter of intent comes in, that
mhm,
you can look give it to a guardian, so that he know very well about. The fourth aspect is that he is a legal guardian. How
mhm,
much does he understand about the role?
mhm,
Because what happens is that though you have identified somebody as a legal guardian, he
mhm,
might not be able to shoulder the responsibility.
mhm.
So how much he can shoulder the responsibility, what are his capabilities, you need to assess that.
Okay.
Create a checklist that these are the points your child, these are the aspect where your child care should be taken.
Mhm,
And then look at the legal guardian whom you have appointed, how he fits into your checklist, and then you can identify the right person and discuss with them early in life, and maybe you can involve them early, and help them understanding your child requirement, so that if the time come, if the situation comes, right, they know much more about your child affair, and they are ready to take shoulder the responsibility.
Can we do the same thing when we create a will as well? Do we have anybody responsible or whom we can hold responsible legally when we are creating a will for a kid?
So ideally, I would say that whomsoever you have identified, families with special needs children have to discuss with them. Then take their consent. Without taking a consent, if you identified somebody and suppose any eventuality arises, right, and tomorrow you're the legal guardian finds that a tall boy with autism spectrum at the age of 40 is standing in front of him and he doesn't know anything about him,
True,
then
true.
you can imagine the situation at that
Yeah,
point of time. He can deny, I don't know anything about it. So I would say whomsoever you appoint in your child care, it's not only legal guardian, even the trustees also, the legal guardian, the residential care, or anybody, your discussion with other family members also have to be there. You should be in a constant discussion. You should take their consent before you appoint them.
Mhm. Also, there was one of the questions from one of the parents who also wanted to find out if you could elaborate more about single parent and their savings
Sorry, single parent and
and how to go about their savings.
okay. So yes, in fact, we just did a session to many of the single parents on the financial planning aspect.
Mhm,
Now, as a single parent, as I said, your expenses are much higher.
mhm,
Now, first of all, when I'm answering this question, and I always say, first of all, identify your requirements.
mhm,
Know your cash flows, how much you require for your child, how much you require for yourself. Then only you will be able to know that whether the money you are saving is enough for meeting both the goals. Unless and until you this identification is done, it will be very difficult to give any ballpark figure,
correct.
because if I require 10,000 per month, and if I am saving 5,000 per month, and if I do not know that I require 10,000 per month, for me 5,000 is also enough. So for a single parent, I think take a financial planning approach. Don't do any ad hoc investment.
Mhm,
Identify the financial requirements, because your resources are limited and you have got a much higher requirement. Your expenses are higher because
mhm,
you rely on professionals to take care of your child. So do the identify the financial requirement first, and when you are saving money, when you are investing that money, take an asset allocation approach. Don't miss out on assets which can generate a good return on your investment. So invest into equities, invest through mutual fund, take an SIP route, and whenever any money you receive as a lump sum money, don't do
mhm.
ad hoc investment for that. As I said, if you know your finances well, you will be able to adjust that money into a specific financial goal you have planned for. So for a single parent, it's very important that you do create that financial plan and know your requirements well.
Okay. I mean, from my side, we are done. I think it was a very enriching session, Jitendra. We would love to have you another time, and then, in the interest of time, would want to put a stop here. Thank you so much for joining in and
Thank you.
helping all our viewers to understand more. I will definitely refer all the people who would want to go and get in touch with you. In case if you have any PDFs or documents that can help
Okay.
parents, and you can share it with us,
Yeah, so
that would be great.
just one share. I have written a book on financial planning for families having children with special needs,
Okay.
and whatever we have discussed today,
Mhm.
point to point, financial planning, how to create a budget, how to make your investment, legal guardianship, will and trust. I have explained that in detail in this book.
Perfect.
So any parents who want to understand about financial planning, legal aspects, can buy that book and read, and they will be able to get much more knowledge. They will be much more aware about how to go about planning for themselves, and especially for the special need child.
Perfect. Perfect. And that book is called as?
That book is called, the name is Financial Planning for Families Having Children with Special Needs.
Okay.
It's a very specific topic. They will find, you can buy it from Amazon. It is
Okay.
there, or you can go to planspecialneeds.com and you will find the reference of that book.
Perfect. 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 All right. All right. So that's it from our side. And thank you so much again, Jitendra, for
Thank
joining.
you.
And you have a fantastic weekend ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.